What's up, guys? It's me. All right, so as I've been traveling around, I got back to my hotel just a couple days ago, and I flipped open my computer and I'm looking through a bunch of the questions that people are writing in, and a question came across my path that, I'm so surprised. I really haven't covered this much in detail since I even started Reshape the Nation, but it's so applicable to everything that we've got going on. And what it is that I'm talking about is metabolic typing. So what is metabolic typing? Well, for those of you who are actually following Reshape, you'll notice that we have different diet plans laid out for, we call them ecto shapes, meso shapes, and endo shapes. And what those are, it's really based upon metabolic typing started way back when in the 1950s and 60s, actually in the 30s is when the research really started to happen around the words ectomorph, mesomorph, and endomorph. So what is an ectomorph, an endomorph, and mesomorph, and what am I even talking about? Well, essentially, if you look back to the beginnings of metabolic typing, it was all done on research where these researchers like Weston Price, William Kelly, William Walcott, way back when, we're talking decades ago, they started researching all of these different bloodlines and all these different genetic, like these gene pools of these different cultures in different places of the world, and what happens when we feed them a standardized diet, and you can see how they change, how the genes express themselves differently. Now, a lot of the research behind metabolic typing, it's not complete. It's inconclusive. However, they have found that there are all of these different variations in the human digestive system. We're as different on the inside as we are on the outside. So what they did is, as opposed to saying, oh my gosh, there's 16 different variations in the human digestive system, which they've found more than that actually, they've tried to classify them into those three categories. They've got ectomorph, endomorph, and mesomorph. Now, an ectomorph, that is going to be, now typically, and these are just broad general descriptions of them. They tend to be longer, leaner, slender. They've got a thin bone structure, and they thrive off of a higher carbohydrate, lower fat diet. Now, if you actually look at where the bloodline comes from, they'll say that they typically came from around the equator region. Well, most man actually did, but they thrived in those areas, and they came from predominantly an agrarian lifestyle. So they planted crops, and they lived off these of mostly a plant-based diet. They were long, they were lean, they were slender. They can consume a lot of carbohydrates, and they're also classified as what we call slow oxidizers. So those are your buddies who, they're long, they're lean, they're slender, they can eat candy all day, they crave sweets, and sure enough, they don't gain a pound. Those are your ectomorphs, slow oxidizers, and they can get away with a high carbohydrate, like high sugar, low fat diets. And typically, they also have a very difficult time gaining muscle, though. Those are the guys who are always in the gym going, man, I wish I could gain 20 pounds. Or, I cut back on just a couple things and I lose 25 pounds like that. Okay, so they're also the envy of many of us, except you ask them, they're typically the people that would do absolutely anything to try to gain some muscle. Then we've got, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we got our endomorphs. Now, endomorphs, they're classified as fast oxidizers. They've got these highly integrated digestive systems and very effective digestive systems, whereas if you put some carbohydrate into them, they break it down fast, spike the blood sugar levels, big insulin response, and they can pack on the pounds like that. I mean, insanely fast. So endomorphs, as opposed to staying in the equator region, they tended to go north and south into the colder regions, and they're typically, once again, broad general terms, they tend to be a little bit shorter, more squat, thick bone structure, and they can develop a lot of muscle. They get extremely strong, extremely fast. They build muscle quickly. I mean, and if you went back, several centuries, great workers, really, really good workers, because they can throw a sledgehammer around, they can lift a lot of rocks. I mean, we're talking really, really good, good workers. Now, and those are going to be your endomorphs. Now, if you look at the endomorphs, those are also the people who will typically say, well, no matter what I do, I up my calories just a little bit, or if I start to eat carbohydrates, I gain weight like that. I have the most difficult time losing weight, which I'm sure probably there's quite a few endomorphs who are watching this right now. And I tell you what, this is where it comes down to, when a lot of people say, oh, well, it's my genetics. Well, this is really where genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. So now, granted, if you are a typical endomorph, and that's the gene pool that you've been born into, and those are the genes that are ingrained in your DNA, okay, so let's accept that, and we can actually work around it. Now, keep in mind, if you're an endomorph, and you are that fast oxidizer, you've got that insanely effective digestive system, you typically do better on a lower carbohydrate, slightly higher fat, and a higher protein intake as well.